Welcome to the Dr. Diane Show, where we explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. With over 20 years of expertise as a mindset warrior, perspective shifter, and unshakable optimist, I am dedicated to helping you reach your wildest dreams in business, health, performance, and relationships. Learn about the power of thought and how it shapes your life to take risks, change careers, find love, go on adventures, and live passionately with me, Dr. Diane. Get ready for revolutionary ways of thinking, being, and creating an amazing life. The Dr. Diane Show starts now. Hello, everyone. I am Dr. Diane Hayden, and you are listening to the Dr. Diane Show on Transformation Talk Radio. Stay with us for the next hour, where we will explore revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul. Each time on the Dr. Diane Show, we have experts from around the country discussing cutting-edge topics on longevity medicine, natural health, mindset, and soul purpose to help you shift your perspective and become a mindset warrior like me. I'm excited today to have Dr. Adam Breiner. He has dedicated over 2 decades to advancing naturopathic care through innovative techniques and technologies, with a focus on cutting-edge approaches like hyperbaric oxygen therapy and EEG neurofeedback. Dr. Breiner has become a trusted figure in the realm of neurological health, Lyme disease, and other chronic illnesses. Beyond his achievements in neurological disorders, Dr. Breiner has attracted patients nationwide for his natural and forward-looking methods of addressing Lyme disease. His exploration of various modalities, including biomagnetism and frequency-specific microcurrent, has added versatility to his approach, and his insights have been shared on global platforms. He's been a sought-after voice in media discussions on neurology, brain injuries, and Lyme disease. Balancing modern techniques with a foundation in energy medicine, Dr. Breiner's expertise extends to homeopathy, EAB, Reiki, and more. His dedication to natural healing is evident in his practice, whole body medicine, situated within the Breiner Whole Body Health Center in Fairfield, Connecticut. Join us as we delve into Dr. Adam Breiner's insights and experiences, uncovering the driving forces behind his transformative work in the field of neurological wealth. So welcome to the show, Dr. Breiner. How are you today?
Thank you, Dr. Diane. Doing great. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. So we're going to get into a lot of these fascinating things that I mentioned in your bio. But I always like to start kind of at the beginning. What inspired you to become a naturopath and to go down this journey of natural medicine?
Well, good question. We have a center here in Fairfield, Connecticut, with my father, Dr. Mark Breiner, who's one of the leaders in the world in holistic dentistry. And that his journey really started with me back when I was a little kid, when I was having chronic ear infections and being treated through the allopathic approach of antibiotic. Eventually, he came upon the work of Samuel Hahnemann in homeopathy, and that sort of transformed him into this whole natural exploration route, getting rid of my ear infections almost immediately. And it just kind of kept taking him that direction, always learning new things. And so growing up, I was just exposed to all this and had, I actually attended a lot of medical conferences over the years, way before I ever went to medical school, and always knew that I wanted to do, something in the natural health realm, because it was just, super interesting. You could really help people in ways, using the natural healing modalities, your innate ability to get better, and just kind of sometimes you gotta give the body a hand. So really, it's, I kind of grew into it. So by the time I was already in naturopathic medical school, I was already had been thinking in this way for a very long time.
I love what you said about the body's innate ability to heal, because I think that is, something that I've always believed as well. One of the reasons why I started, my natural medicine magazines. And I think that people now are becoming more and more curious about that. And whereas it wasn't too long ago where people would be like, oh, that's not possible, weren't even aware of it, really relied more on, traditional models of medicine. And now I'm seeing more and more people becoming more and more curious and taking, being more proactive about their health. And so I want to go down this route with you of energy medicine and how it
Okay.
relates to health and the body's ability, how that is so true that the body does have this innate ability to heal itself given the right tools.
Yeah,
So, yeah,
yeah.
talk to us about that. Like, how do you explain the concept of energy medicine and what that is?
Well, I think, and just to go off of what you just said about this, where people are at nowadays. I mean, 25 years or so ago, when I would have conversations like, oh, what are you studying? And I'd be like, well, I'm studying, like, oh, like, do you believe in that? I'm like, it's like, I believe in God, this is like, this is just another way of, accessing, healing. Where people didn't really even think that way, because everyone's just been so programmed to the allopathic way of thinking, which is very reductionalist, very just, lock and key. You got to have this drug for this condition. You have this symptom, you take that. You have that. And that's really allopathic medicine in a nutshell. It's just kind of like, I'm going to see like some clustering of symptoms. And I know that this particular pharmaceutical drug can, do that. And then we're going to have side effects, and those side effects have to be treated with another drug. And that's just not the way the world works. And that was something that Hahnemann really brought out, that there's everything actually has a energy to it that can be utilized to heal. And I think when, again, thinking just the allopathic sort of Newtonian approach to medicine, and we all get caught up in this a little bit because it's, just part of, we could, we know what we can see and touch and feel.
Right.
And this using, but when you're doing that, when you're just doing this biochemical treatment, you are missing like 99% of all of everything else. And when you're just doing that, when you're just thinking in those terms, because we're made up of molecules, right? Organs and tissues and things like that. And that's kind of where everything, we all are thinking about. But each molecule is made up of atoms. Each atom is made up of protons, neutrons, electrons, and quarks, and all these other things that we just, all these subatomic particles. And all those chemical bonds are really just vibrational interactions with these subatomic particles, which have, from physics, this wave particle duality. Is an electron a wave, or is it a particle? And it's like, that's part of this wave particle theory, and you're getting into all this physics. Oh my God, physics! Like, how can that have anything to do with medicine? It's like, well, it just has everything to do with us.
Mm-hmm.
So we have, the idea of the body is just really, what you can touch and what you can feel is only part of where our field is. Our body's electromagnetic field is just huge, and it's like it extends out. And don't think that things can't affect it and we can't affect it other ways as well. So, homeopathy is one of the first things, I was introduced to, as mentioned before, because that's using the energetic vibrational states of medicines and plants and whatever it might be in order to change your vibrational state. And so that's kind of, I think a really great quote is from is someone who everyone might know a little bit about now. His name is Nikola Tesla, and it's not Elon Musk, but Tesla, who really gave us modern alternating current electricity. And the power system that we have in this world is really due to Nikola Tesla. The radio was actually invented by Tesla. There are just so many things that Tesla did. And one of the things that he said was, if you want to know the future of medicine, think in terms of frequency, energy, and vibration. And that's kind of where things were, but they're progressing. And now that we have some of these newer technologies and techniques, we're able to access that even more. So it's really kind of cool.
Yeah, I think that where people get stuck is we have become a society that only believes what we can see.
Yeah.
And if we can't see it, then does it really exist? Or, where you're talking about how we all, when you boil down what a human is, it is all energy and vibration. But because, we can touch, we can like, hit our fist or whatever, or touch the table or whatever, like how can that be vibration or energy? What are you talking about?
Mm.
This isn't, we're matter, but we're not when it really boils down to it.
Yeah,
I mean, we
and there,
are, but it's much more, but it's made up
yeah,
of all these, it's
it's so many
vibration.
things.
Yeah.
It's
Yep.
vibration, and I think if people just want to think about sort of this four-dimensional way of sort of thinking, is that imagine somebody just yells out, "Oh, I hate you." Okay, so what's there? What's in the physical realm of that? Well, there's you speaking and that your voice hitting the particles in the air, creating that transfer of energy through that to hit your eardrums. And now you get this thing also called an emotion of like, oh my gosh, of like whatever that might feel. And that releases certain chemicals in your brain, and it causes this, perhaps this sympathetic response in your body. And now you start getting a feeling of, that night tightness in your chest or knots in your stomach, and you start feeling nauseous, and you start feeling all of a sudden that wave that just hit you, that's from somebody else's energy that they took from their brain and put out, that I hate you, all of a sudden now it's causing this whole physiologic response.
So true.
So that you can kind of see there is a connection, and that's just somewhat on a physical point, but it's not just that, right? That's part of the mind connection right down to the physical.
Oh
So
yeah, totally.
that's I guess one little quick example we could
Yeah,
think
that
of.
right. And I think that makes sense for people to try to visualize or imagine, is just what you're saying, it's how emotions can translate into vibration or energy.
Mhm.
Both ways, like positive
Both ways.
emotions and negative emotions.
Absolutely.
Yeah, for
Absolutely.
sure. I'm excited to talk to you about all these different modalities that you're doing, and we're going to talk a little bit for sure about your practice. You have uh, large, multidisciplinary, with a lot of different practitioners in there. So we're going to talk a little bit about all the different practitioners that work at the Whole Body Medicine Center as well. But right now, we're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we will explore more with Dr. Adam Breiner and whole body medicine. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. But before we continue, I want to make sure everyone knows how to contact me. You can find me at www.drdianehayden.com, or either of my two publications, www.naturalnutmeg.com and www.essentialnaples.com. And you can learn more about Dr. Adam Breiner at www.wholebodymed.com. That's WHOLEBODYMED.com. So welcome back, Dr. Breiner. We are talking about fascinating things related to one of my favorite topics, energy medicine. And I want to get into a lot of the different modalities that you treat at your center, and then um, the different conditions that you see a lot of, and how you have created all of these different modalities that you work with. So I know you do a lot with Lyme disease, you do a lot with neurological issues. So how did you were you drawn to that, or was it kind of just like a natural thing where these types of patients started gravitating to you?
I mean, I was always interested in the brain. I think that was something I had always been interested in. So I was drawn to that, pretty much, off the bat. I wasn't exactly know I was going to like deal with brain neurologic, you know, when I was in school, because it's a pretty hard area. It's honestly to understand. But I think looking for ways of healing the body led me right away to hyperbaric oxygen therapy, which was something that I went and got in touch with the world leader who brought it for neurological conditions to the planet, which was Dr. Richard Neubauer. And I called him up and he's like, come on down, so I learned with him. And then I learned about something that I had never heard of in medical school called an EEG neurofeedback. And it was something that really was very, very new at that time. So I was able to contact and go and train with Dr. Margaret Ayers, who really was Barry Sturman, who she had worked with at UCLA. She was actually, I think, the first person, or one of the very first two people or so, to bring neurofeedback to the world in a clinical sense, which was really cool. And that's really just what that is using the brain's brain waves and training your brain to repattern itself. And there was nothing more naturopathic to me than anything. I was like, oh, this is cool. This is using technology to teach your body to heal itself. That's like perfect. And that's where I started like bringing those together. And then I think just sort of how I think about cases and the types of people that just came in were always the difficult cases. They were never just even when I was in school doing clinical rounds, everyone would be like, oh, I got a patient today that is doing, a cough, a cold, or whatever. And for me, it was like, oh, I had this patient, is here on a presenting in rounds. They have, lupus, and they have, fibromyalgia, and they have this and that. You have like 4 different conditions all in one patient. It's like, it was crazy, but you have to think about how, the underlying causes, and you have to figure out, well, what can you use to do that? And if you think in the right sort of, I guess the right mindset, the right philosophy, you just start tackling those cases. I mean, there's a lot of commonalities. So Lyme disease was, again, something that they really didn't talk about other than in passing when I was in school. It's like you got Burley Burgdorfite, bad. Rickettsia, very bad, very bad. It's like, you just like, okay. And where I kind of, one of my first patient of Lyme actually came, I found out, was we were treating that person for a brain injury, really what she was induced by transcranial electrical stimulation to their, well, not nothing that like we're doing, but really like, very strong, electroshock therapy, shall I say. They were doing electroshock therapy for massive depression and cognitive brain fog. It was really bad for them. So they said, can I do hyperbaric to help me? Because, they were really not feeling good after that, after electroshock therapy. So when we did that, then at one point it comes out, person was, I'm just not feeling good. I feel like I have a fever. I have this and that. And I went, wait a minute. Have you ever been tested for Lyme disease? And no. And then when it went through the case, I said, this actually might be something else. Let's test you. Because, hyperbaric at high pressures, the Lyme bacteria doesn't like oxygen. So it's actually could be a treatment for Lyme. Sure enough, the person had Lyme. So all these years, they were misdiagnosed of a sort of, psychological issues, when really it was Lyme causing it. And that kind of got us started treating, very difficult cases of Lyme because of the things that we, the treatments that I had. And, it's just kind of taken off from there. And, I, of course, a lot of traumatic brain injuries, strokes, concussive injuries, MS, I mean, autism, all these types of things, you can use a lot of these modalities to help, especially hyperbaric oxygen, neurofeedback, neurostimulation. We're doing more neurostimulation than anything now. So that's just kind of, how that came to be.
What I think is fascinating is just these different modalities that you use, because I think there's still a lot of naturopaths that really are just treating with nutrition and supplements. And not that there's anything wrong with that, but I think for some of these cases, it goes way beyond what you can do with just nutrition and supplements.
Yeah, I mean, we always have to think about the nutritional status of the person and what supplements can help or aid. I mean, we'll use ways of, testing to see, well, what do you need? Because we could think of like 50 things, right? It's like, okay, I remember a mentor of mine said, we have, the allopathic doctors, it's the kind of idea is like, if all you have is a hammer, everything's a nail, that kind of thing, right? Whereas we have like so many, I have like so many tools in my toolbox. Is like, oh, okay, what don't we use? Not just what can we use? Like someone just came in today, they're like, I have all this. Is there anything we can do? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of things you can do. And like, someone who did chronic long haul COVID, which is a new thing, right? It's out there,
Yep.
unfortunately, a lot of vaccine injured patients, et cetera. And it's like, so what do we do? And their doctors are just like, I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I'm like, well, let's first figure out what's going on. And we got a lot of things we can try. Hopefully we could just do a few things and make it happen. Get you better. But that's that's kind of like, what tools exactly, what tools that we have, and technologies can do a lot of things. And for instance, I'll just mention this really briefly, which was well, how can we tell like what nutrients might be low in the body? There's blood tests, there's urine tests, there's things like that. I have something that in the office is a spectrophotometry. We can go right through the skin. Actually, I'll show you. Bring it right here. Look at that. That's a spectrophotometer. We can go right on the dermis of the skin and see, based on the light refracting off, what minerals, what vitamins, what heavy metals might be there. Again, our skin is an excretory organ, so what are we screening? What's there? It's like a tissue biopsy, but we get instantaneous results.
Wow.
So it's like, rather than doing a hair analysis and seeing what happened 3 months ago, you're seeing what's going on right now. It's really cool. So that can give us guidance,
Even blood test is not, by, like right now, it's pretty close, but not
Right.
like that. And for people who, either are squeamish about that, don't like getting their blood drawn, or maybe you've got a patient that's has had such a long history of chronic disease. It's just,
Yeah.
more blood draw after blood draw after blood draw. It's like, after a while, you're
Right.
like, can we try
Yeah.
something else?
I mean, there, we still use blood draws. We still use like all these other, because, you got to look sometimes at multiple compartments of the body. But like I just had someone today, they are very chronically ill, but, they don't necessarily they're not as bad as they think from a nutritional standpoint, at least for our initial quick assessment. And that's good to know too, because it's like saying, well, I take this and this and that. And maybe you need it, maybe you don't. So, but when it comes to like these, some of the modalities, I know we want to get into that. And we mentioned EEG and, the brain waves and neurofeedback and hyperbaric, and how amazing that is, because that's just the healing modality of all healing modalities. You can't live without oxygen for more than a few minutes, and it has so many effects on the body and the brain. So that's, amazing technique. I'm sure we could do, probably 5 podcasts just on hyperbaric
Just on that.
oxygen, to be honest. There's some newer techniques I'm using, such as biomagnetism, frequency specific microcurrent, and other modalities, which are kind of groundbreaking. And we can get into that a little bit. I even brought a little, like, I like to show things because sometimes visually is always a nicer to understand it. But that's, I think, again, affecting the body through energy, or affecting the energy of the body and bringing about dramatic changes for patients. It's really, really cool. In our diagnostic techniques of also, besides like EAV testing, which can give us a lot of information. I can give you some case examples too.
Yeah, that's amazing. Just quickly back to, we're gonna have to take a short break in a minute, but back to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So how, I know this is going to depend on the patient, but is that something that somebody has to come do for, can they do it once? Does it depend on the issue that they have? Is it more like, no, we need to treat you for weeks or months on end, or how does that work?
It's very, it's condition specific. I mean, if you do one hyperbaric oxygen therapy session, it's going to be like your body's getting this boost of oxygen. You're getting all these genes turned on, for, let's say, increasing healing and decreasing inflammation, and off for the opposite. But that's just like switching the light on one time, right? So you got to hit the body multiple times. It's dosing, you're dosing it, and it's a genetic therapy, really. And you have to do it multiple times. How many and what pressures, that is condition specific, So it depends. Neurological conditions, most of them need at least 40 sessions, sometimes more. If you're just, some quick thing, or if someone's got a wound, that may take more, may take less. So it really depends.
Yeah, I thought so. Um, This is exciting. So yeah, we're definitely going to talk more about a couple of modalities that you mentioned. We're going to take a short break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show. When we come back, we'll be talking more about energy medicine with Dr. Adam Breiner. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden, and I'm talking today with Dr. Adam Breiner. You can learn more about him at www.wholebodymed.com. That's WHOLEBODYMED.com. So before we just left off, we were talking about, you mentioned a couple of different modalities that I definitely want to get into more in depth with you, just so our listeners understand. So you mentioned biomagnetism, frequency-specific medicine, and then also something called EAV, which is electroacupuncture, according to Vol. So let's just start with whichever one and kind of just give our listeners, like, I'm sure people are like, what is all that?
Yeah, it's
all those letters.
Yeah, in regular medicine or allopathic medicine, there's a bazillion, acronyms for everything, and we have to have ours too. So
right.
I'm going to EAV is electroacupuncture, according to Vol. Dr. Vol was a German physician, and he was the first one to show that the acupuncture points, again, this is something that the Chinese documented thousands of years ago, right? As that there's different points that we access in through our body to affect it with what metal needles. What do metals do? What does metal do? It conducts, right? So when you think of Chinese medicine and everything like that, we are talking about the electromagnetic energy of the body. Chinese call it qi, okay, but it is electromagnetic. And Vol was the first one to show with an ohm meter that those different points actually have a different electrical resistivity than their surrounding skin. And he was able to show how that was consistently, if you can test it using the special probe on the finger or on the hand or wherever it is in the body, in different acupuncture points. There's a little bit more to this. I'm not going to get into every detail, but basically, imagine using, we have our circulatory system, right? You could do a cardiac stress test. You could do nerve conduction studies in your nerves. Then you also have your electromagnetic energy system, your meridians. This is like doing a stress test of the meridians. So we can see what areas are deficient or have excess energy. And then you can start exploring, well, why is that? And one of the things that Vol discovered kind of serendipitously is that you can actually, different things, right, can affect the body. We mentioned like a homeopathic. He was actually doing a lecture to different doctors. He was finding this other doctor had a prostate issue, and his prostate point kept dropping. They went out for a lunch break. They came back. Prostate point wasn't dropping anymore. And Vol's like, this should be repeatable. What's going on? What did you do? Oh, I didn't do anything. What did you take? I didn't take anything. So Vol's like scratching his head. He's not looking that smart at this point, or very credible. And then the doctor said, well, my friend's homeopathic doctor gave me the remedy. Oh, so you did do something? No, I didn't do it. I just have it here in my pocket.
Oh, wow.
Oh, so he took it off and tested him again. Point drop. Had him hold it. Point balanced. Now we see there was an energetic influence on the body. So Vol created a way of sort of testing in the circuit different things. Nowadays we have electronics to record various signals. Like we're having electronic signals going back and forth between us, right? Audible and visual. So Vol was able to now we use signals to different things, like let's say a bacteria like Borrelia burgdorferi, the Lyme bacteria, or let's say coronavirus or Epstein-Barr virus or things like that. Everyone has its own unique electromagnetic signature, just like we have our own fingerprint. And if you send that down the meridian that's being affected, if that changes the electroconduction, now we have something that has actually caused a change. So now we have a signal detection. So we're signal detecting things in the body, and it could give us more information. I mean, can we diagnose, for sure, pathological, infectious diseases using this? We don't want to say that, but we can say that we're finding the signals of these things.
Right.
And if we match it up with symptoms, we got some pretty good information.
So I just want to repeat one thing you said, because I don't know if everybody caught this or not, but I think
Okay.
it's definitely worth repeating. So this patient, so to speak, that was working with Dr. Ball didn't even have to didn't ingest whatever it was. It was literally just on their person, let's say,
Mhm.
in a pocket, holding in their hand, whatever. So to me, that is proof right there that you have an energy system around your body.
Yep.
And whatever this was, this homeopathic treatment was affecting this person through the energy system, not
Yes.
through being ingested or even topically, putting something on, nothing like that. It's
Yep.
basically just in his
It was
pocket.
just an energetic interaction.
Yep.
So that's a way that we can see things. So if someone comes in with possible Lyme or anything like that, we may do blood testing, and usually not. I mean, people a lot of times have done the standard Quest, LabCorp, whatever, which are not great for finding some of these infectious diseases. But what we'll do is we'll take the EAV to see will the signal showing up here. But it gets more than that. It's not just if it's showing up generally, it may be very specific. Okay. So for instance, somebody, I'll give you a quick example. I had this woman came in the other week, and she's had chronic illness for years. For 15 years now. She had a compound fracture in her pinky. She had and it took them like 18 months to figure out that there was an infection there, osteomyelitis, got some treatment, but then she never just ever felt really good since then. She's constantly has problems. She has a lot of health issues, high inflammatory markers in her blood, and all this other stuff. So I said, I wonder, is there still an infection there? So using the EAV, we can tag into that exact area. And lo and behold, I'm like, oh, look at that. The signal for osteomyelitis came up, and staph, which is common
Wow.
infection. So I said, okay, now we know things we can use to maybe help this out. And now it can jump us into other discussions about some of the other modalities. But that's a really kind of, precision, you know, I guess techniques, using these technologies with the energetics of our body to figure out what might we have going on here.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is it similar or different to frequency specific medicine?
Well, okay. So it's called frequency specific microcurrent.
Hmm.
So there's a lot of ways of sort of affecting the body with frequencies. There could be negative ways, right? We know there could people have EMF, people hear about that, or other things. Whole own shows and podcasts that we can dedicate to
Right.
that. But a long time ago, back in the early 20s and 30s and stuff, there was a lot of electroceutical medicine, a lot of electromedicine being used by various people. Royal Rife being one of them. Again, its own show. I'm not going to get into that at this moment, but there were people using these frequencies to heal the body using pulsing through electrical devices. Um, and that all got kiboshed by the AMA and the rest of the allopathic juggernaut that became what we have now, because they didn't want anything that could interfere with what they were trying to do.
And
But there
that's a
was
whole nother podcast.
a whole its own
Yeah.
show just on this politics of medicine.
Hmm.
It's really fascinating, and that's actually sometimes I talk just on that because people really just learning about that is like opens people's eyes.
Yep.
But so but some of those equipment, some of that information did survive the Great Suppression. And what was one practitioner in the mid 90s, Dr. Carolyn McMacken, had a patient that was really not doing well. She had actually done some work, she's a chiropractor, and she had done some deep fascial work on this person, and for pains and stuff they had, and they were actually worse afterwards. And she's like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And she had this equipment from one of her practice partners, and he said, well, why don't you put this electrode on here and in there, and maybe run this frequency and that frequency at the same time, and see if that helps. She did that, and lo and behold, the woman's pain just like went away. She's like, what the heck? And then she repeated it with different types of patients, and really had this list of sort of saying, and it's not just one frequency, it has to be two at the same time. one for the tissue, one for the condition. So for instance, if you want to decrease inflammation in the nerve, you got to do 40 and 396. If you want to do decreasing inflammation in the spinal cord, that's different. That's 40 and 10. Right. Okay. And so what she was doing is, and she noticed that like it always works if you know the frequency and the tissue. And then you have to start thinking anatomically, you have to start thinking pathophysiologically, like how did this happen? What was going on here? And she started treating people and she's like, oh my gosh, this really works. I don't know how it works, but it's working. Started seeing, could I teach it to other people? And yeah, I could teach it to other people and it works for them too. And she was kidding these people who were like fibromyalgia patients. And that's really hard to treat, right? Well, she to get out of pain after, dozens of years in pain in 90 minutes. She's like, what's happening? She got able to get somebody at NIH to actually take people's blood samples and run it through. They're like, oh my gosh. They're like, this isn't normal. Like, this must be a problem. Someone said, it can't be a real blood sample. This can't, no. This is done, and it was done by the top guy at NIH. Their inflammatory cytokines were dropping off the chart in 90 minutes. So you're able to show that, show endorphins going up, like able to show all these things. So we're able to use these techniques and technologies to target in right to the area. It's like targeting. It's unbelievable. You can melt scars with this thing. You can, oh yeah. I'll tell you about a little bit more about that case that I just brought up before, and how using the FSM after taking that knowledge from EAV made a big difference.
Wow, that is amazing. And I'm definitely want to hear that. I'm sure our listeners do too. So we're going to talk about that when we come back. We're going to take another short break. You're listening to the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. When we come back, we'll be learning more with Dr. Adam Breiner. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. We're back on the Dr. Diane Show with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. You can learn more about me at www.drdianehayden.com. And I am talking today with Dr. Adam Breiner. You can learn more about him at his practice, Whole Body Medicine. The website is www.wholebodymed.com. That's WHOLEBODYMED.com. And before we break, you started to tell us about a fascinating case study that you have, Dr. Breiner. So let's just jump right in with that.
Okay. So with this case, I was just mentioning, this woman we found on the EAV still probably had osteomyelitis and a staph infection. So I said, well, let's do a little confirmation perhaps on that. Let's see if we can bring you some relief, because she's got pain all over her body. She's got a lot of things. So I hooked her up to frequency specific microcurrent. I'm actually going to show you right here. This is like one of the devices. Okay, we can actually plug in exactly what frequency we want, the polarity, the amplitude, and we a lot of times use some moist towels or pads on the body to direct it exactly where we want to go. So I started treating the frequencies that we know help with staph in the bone. And as we're running through those frequencies, she's like, oh, I feel so nice and relaxed. I mean, which is a common thing. And she's like, my pain in my feet and my legs that I have had for like, that's just gone. She's like, what's happening? And my hands getting warm. And she was like having all these sensations. And I'm literally going through different frequencies, and I was going through the bone and the bone marrow and the periosteum, which is the cover around the bone. And then we were trying to I didn't get to everything, and because then you have to get to the different tissues. But by the end, she was feeling like so amazing. And guess what? Her finger had no more pain, because she would still have pain on movement with her finger. But she's like, yeah, she's like, what the heck? I mean, I had somebody else with RSD, reflex sympathetic dystrophy, which is almost impossible to treat, which hyperbaric can also help with. This is after traumatic injury and surgeries with nerve damage and muscle and scarring and everything. we got her out of pain, and she's just like, this is insane, right? And I mean, now I have her working with our new one of our newest additions to the practice, Dr. Sean Altman, who's a physical therapist, who's, we're bringing in him because he's very, he knows like to think in the way, this holistic way of thinking. And I said, listen, I got to train you. You got to start training in frequency specific, because you're going to see something really different. And he's like, now he's starting to use that. And he's just like, this is an unfreaking believable, because now he's taking cases that, would normally, let's say, take so forever to help them out. And you can get them better in such a shorter period of time, but actually have lasting results where you couldn't necessarily ever do that with anything else. I mean, if anyone's ever had an adjustment or anything like that, you know how sometimes it keeps going out? Well, that's because there's ligament laxity. Well, guess what? With FSM, we put the frequency for the ligaments and how to heal that. You'll actually feel the tissue just like start tightening up right then and there.
Wow.
It'll stabilize it. It's pretty crazy. So that's something you can get a real world sense of how we, start thinking about things and putting them into practice.
Yeah, I mean, and if everything is energy, right, and it has its own vibration, and then there has to be a frequency related to that. And just like you were saying, it's not just the frequency related to the particular body tissue or organ or whatever it might be, part of the body, but it's also the frequency of how you would heal that or what the issue is.
What
Like
the issue is,
Lyme
right?
disease has a frequency.
Lyme has frequencies. That there's also different types of frequencies, different types of frequency devices that can create those bacteria or viruses to vibrate and shatter, which is
Right.
a way of helping them out. And then your body comes in and cleans it up, right? So that there's other frequency technologies, but that's one. And then we've been using another thing to help with balance the body and help it get rid of even some pathogens. And if you one of that's called biomagnetism, which is a really cool thing that is really tapping into our body's system in a way that people never probably even thought of. I mean, people have been using magnets probably a long time in healing. Some people have heard about using magnets, but this is very different. It was first the idea of it was first discovered by Dr. Borgmeyer back in the 80s during the NASA space program. He was the chief medical scientist. And what he did is he found that the astronauts were coming back from space, they ended up with leg length discrepancies. One foot was like, one leg was like an inch or so, and a half an inch or so off than the other, because they had every biometric on these people measured. He's like, what the heck's going on? After being on Earth for a while, that would go back. He realized it was being out of the Earth's magnetosphere, or in a weakened state of the magnetosphere, because we're electromagnetic, right? We've been discussing this, and that will get out of balance. So there were new high power neodyne magnets at the time that, that if you could place them on the body to repolarize the body properly, it would go back in. As Dr. Goya is in Mexico, heard Borgmeyer lecture, and he said, well, that's really interesting because magnets affect and are created by electric fields, electromagnetic fields, right? Moving charged particles create magnetic fields, and you can affect those fields with magnets. What's the biggest electrical or charged particle in our body? That's hydrogen. Hydrogen is pH. So he said, well, maybe we can change, we can help affect pH in the body. And what do bacteria and viruses and parasites and everything need to thrive? Well, they need a good temperature, they need good food, and they need the right pH. If everyone wants to go and grow anything in a petri dish, you don't meet the right conditions, you're not growing that pathogen. Okay. Right. So imagine if you can change the environment, the electromagnetic environment, and the pH, you could start helping out a lot of things. And that's what we started to find. So that's just a quick snapshot of how biomagnetism works. And I'll show you, just you're using magnets, very, very strong magnets to,
cool.
to affect the body. And you have to use one polarity on one area. Okay. And another polarity in another area. And there are different ways that we sort of test along to do that, but you can test to see, finding out, okay, is this the spot? Does the body need this? And you can actually, we'll see the leg length shift. Like if they had, let's say, Borrelia, well, we know one of the pairs is retrohepatic to the hepatic. We put one that, costal hepatic. We put that over near the liver, and all of a sudden their leg length goes boop, like that.
Wow.
And we put the other pole that it needs, it'd go like that. So for instance, that patient that I mentioned with the osteomyelitis or staph, right? Because I found a signal of staph on the EAV. Well, we're probably going to use magnetic pairs on her that relate to staph and to create sort of this whole cleansing of the body. And again, it's not, the magnets aren't killing the bacteria. They're changing the body's environment so the bacteria is not happy to be there anymore. Even if the bacteria is gone, sometimes the bacteria can still leave I'll call it an energetic
Signature.
a signature or disturbance in the body that you got to clear up, right?
Right.
So that's, some pretty cool ways of, I mean, you could see some pretty amazing stuff. People feel great after we use the magnets on their body and balance them out.
Yeah. So a lot of our listeners are local.
Mm,
Some are also obviously from all different parts of the country and world. I know you do some virtual things in your practice, but you have
yeah,
a huge group of diverse practitioners. I want to make sure we just touched on that. So for people who are local who want to actually come see you in Fairfield, they could, or people can connect with you virtually. But let's just talk a little bit about who the other practitioners are that you work with.
absolutely. Yeah, we got a great group here. Of course, my father, Dr. Mark Breiner, in whole body dentistry, holistic dentist. It gets people from all over coming to him. We have Dr. David Brady, who's well-known integrated practitioner, naturopath, DCND, and David's a real whiz at all of the sort of the metabolic testing and various things like that in the body, and he's internationally known. I have Dr. David Johnston, who is an osteopath, cranial osteopath. So he does craniosacral therapy. He was actually taught that for the Upledger Institute. So he's using that. Dr. Elena Sokolova, naturopath with a background as being an MD in Russia for years before that. And she works with a lot of patients, a lot of more women's health issues as well, but just Chinese medicine and acupuncture. And she also does some EAV testing. So you have to think of all these people, right? All these great practitioners we have. We have Dr. Jennifer Letitia, been with us for about over a year. She's a medical doctor, former actually plastic surgeon, hand surgeon, and through her own journey became into the integrated medicine world and has been using that with great success with treating patients. And so she does a whole host of stuff. All these people, by the way, you can see on my website and learn more about them. John D'Angelo, he is one of the world's foremost practitioners in traditional Japanese Reiki. It's very different than Reiki in the West, Jinshin, all these other things he uses. And we have a lot of patients, especially the Lyme patients. They come in, I need their energy system to be balanced. It's very important. You're not going to get better until the meridians are balanced. So a lot of times he works on that. And of course, Dr. Sean Altman, physical therapy, and he's he thinks the way we think. So when someone comes in with a physical ailment, it's not like traditional physical therapy. So he's kind of a whiz with a lot of things, and I just gave him a new whiz tool with the FSM. So he's like he's taken off with that one too, and so maybe you'll have him also on a podcast as well, because I think he gives I think you'll learn a lot.
I'd love to. You certainly have just an amazing group or team that you have, created there. I feel like it's everything. I mean, it's like one stop. You've got dentistry, naturopathic medicine, osteopathic, physical therapy, chiropractic. I mean, you name it, for whatever issues people are dealing with, or even just people who are, looking for preventative measures, who want
Absolutely.
to find a really great place where they can just, take care of all of their health needs in one stop for sure. And I would definitely love to interview more of your practitioners for sure. And you and I definitely have to do this again, because I feel like we just scratched the surface on so many things, and we're at the end already. But it's been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being with us. And again, people can find more about Dr. Adam Breiner at www.wholebodymed.com. Thank you again, Dr. Breiner, for sure. And I want to
you.
thank all of you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show. Please join me the first and third Thursdays at 11 Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific. Next time in the show, we'll be discussing more about the power of thoughts and beliefs and the impact they have on your life. Have a great week, and I'll see you back here next time. Thank you for tuning into the Dr. Diane Show, revolutionary expansion of mind, body, and soul with me, Dr. Diane Hayden. Tune in every Thursday at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern on transformationtalkradio.com. Center your thoughts on what you want and shut the door on every suggestion of fear, worry, or lack from your own consciousness or the consciousness around you. Once you master that, everything is possible. To learn more about me, Dr. Diane, and receive a free digital subscription of my magazine, visit naturalnutmeg.com.